Welcome to our Unsung Heroes segment for this time. Unsung Heroes. I sometimes focus on people in the Bible who may not be that well known. I'd like to go to Acts, the 20th chapter. Paul had a very effective ministry. And what made Paul tick? Well, perhaps it was people like Tychicus. Tychicus was one of those who helped the Apostle Paul, and Tychicus worked very hard, served Paul long and dedicatedly, diligently. He took a licking and kept on ticking, we could say. Let's go and talk about Tychicus today. Tychicus' name in Greek perhaps means fortuitous. Let's talk about him here. Paul here is going in the book of Acts, 20th chapter, the 4th verse. He's going back to Jerusalem from what is today Turkey, Asia Minor. And in the western part of Turkey was the Roman province of Asia, or Phrygia. And from that province, which is today western Turkey, came Tychicus. And in the 4th verse of Acts 20, and Luke is writing here about this trip back to Jerusalem. And Sopater of Berea accompanied him to Asia, also Aristarchus and Secundus of the Thessalonians, Gaius of Derbe, Timothy, and Tychicus and Trophimus of Asia. And Tychicus probably evidently didn't go all the way to Jerusalem. He might have stopped at Miletus. If you read the rest of the book of Acts, he might have stopped at Miletus and not gone any further. But he accompanied him for part of the trip. And if you read the book of the New Testament and the writings of Paul, you'll see that Tychicus was very critically important in Paul's ministry. He was a liaison, a servant who went between Paul and various church areas to convey important messages and to perform important functions. I'd like to go to 2 Corinthians. Well, I'm not going to turn there, but I will say that if you look at 2 Corinthians, the 8th, I believe it is the 8th chapter, and verse 16 through verse 24, which I'm not going to read, but Paul had sent people to Corinth to gather up goods for the poor saints in Judea, to make a collection for the saints in Judea, and perhaps scholars will debate who all of those people were whom Paul sent, but it's possible Tychicus was among them. So you could study that passage and see what the commentaries have to say. But I do want to go to Ephesians and the end of the book of Ephesians. And here in Ephesians 6 and verse 21, Ephesians 6:21. So Paul is writing from his prison, he was like what's the word I'm thinking of? Homebound, house arrest. Yeah, house arrest in Rome. Verse 21. But that you also may know my affairs and how I am doing. This is Ephesians 6:21. Tychicus, a beloved brother and faithful minister in the Lord, will make all things known to you, whom I have sent to you for this very purpose, that you may know our affairs and that he may comfort your hearts. So a very effective messenger and servant of Paul, and Paul was sending him to the Ephesians to update them and to encourage them. And then, if you go to Colossians, in the book of Colossians, at the end of that chapter, let's go to verse 7 of Colossians 4. We're going to the end of the book of Colossians. Tychicus, a beloved brother, faithful minister, and fellow servant in the Lord, will tell you all the news about me. So he was probably an ordained elder in the church when you read about all the various verses about him. I am sending him to you for this very purpose, that he may know your circumstances and comfort your hearts. With Onesimus, a faithful and beloved brother, who is one of you. They will make known to you all things which are happening here. And so again, we find Tychicus among those whom Paul uses and to interact, to keep the churches together, united together, and keeping people informed about his activities and in strengthening and edifying the brethren. Let's go now to the book of Titus. And in the book of Titus, if we go to the end of that book, let's go to the 12th verse of Titus 3. As you know, Titus was there on the island of Crete, taking care of the brethren there, pastoring there. And Paul's writing to him, and he says to him, "When I send Artemas to you, or Tychicus," so one or the other he's going to send. So once again, you see the importance of Tychicus. He's one of those Paul's considering to send to them. "When I send Artemas to you, or Tychicus, be diligent to come to me at Nicopolis, for I have decided to spend the winter there." So in effect, if Tychicus was sent, he would have been sent to kind of take over the church while Titus went to be with Paul. So again, he was one who could be given that responsibility. Now, when we come to the end of Paul's career, we find again Tychicus mentioned. So let's go to 2 Timothy. At the end of 2 Timothy, here Paul is now in a second imprisonment. And this was the imprisonment that led to his martyrdom. And so at the end of 2 Timothy, he has some very important things to say. These are the last things he's going to write before his martyrdom. And so he says in verse 9 to Timothy, this is 2 Timothy 4 and verse 9, "Be diligent to come to me quickly, for Demas has forsaken me, having loved this present world, and has departed for Thessalonica." So unfortunately, there was one important pillar of the church who had, in effect, defected. How sad. On the other hand, he says Crescens for Galatia. I think that may just be the fact that he was sent there. I don't know if he left Paul, abandoned Paul, or Paul sent him there. And the same thing, he says Titus for Dalmatia. Well, in that case, he might have sent Titus to Dalmatia. So in one case, a person fell away and left. In the other cases, it may very well be that, at least in the case of Titus, he probably was sent to Dalmatia to minister there, and the tradition is that he went to that area, which I think is Croatia today. But in any case, Paul is now left alone. He doesn't have his important people with him anymore, who were his aides, and so he wants Timothy to come to him. You can understand that. Verse 11. He does have Luke with him, though, the beloved physician, the one who wrote the book of Acts and the Gospel of Luke. Luke is with him. And he says in verse 11, "Only Luke is with me. Get Mark." This is probably the Mark who wrote the Gospel of Mark. "Get Mark and bring him with you, for he is useful to me for ministry." Verse 12, "And Tychicus I have sent to Ephesus." Oh, so you see again the importance of Tychicus. He was sent to Ephesus as one of the last acts of Paul to take care of the church there. So we see the importance of Tychicus. I hope that this inspires you to look up these verses and study what you can. We don't have that much information beyond what I've told you today, but you can deal with the information there and what commentators have to say, and at least remember the name now. He is a hero of the New Testament church. So let's remember this unsung hero, and let's give an accolade to Tychicus.